Okay, Chair, we're live now on YouTube.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the Planning and Development Committee. Can I remind all participants that normal rules of procedure apply? For example, comments and questions need to be directed through the chair, and as we are meeting virtually, proceedings may take slightly longer, so your patience would be appreciated. As per our virtual meeting procedures, if questions have been received prior to the meeting, I will call upon the relevant member at the appropriate time to raise the question. If you are invited to speak, please state your name and be as specific as possible about which issue it is you are speaking to. Whilst members of the public can view this meeting via YouTube Live, they will not be able to actively participate or comment on proceedings. As this meeting is being live streamed, can I remind all participants that their conduct should reflect this. Any agents, applicants or objectors that wish to speak on a particular application have had the opportunity to inform the Planning Department in advance of today's meeting. I will invite those individuals to present their cases at the appropriate time in proceedings. With holding the meeting remotely to reduce the likelihood of technical issues, these individuals have been asked to dial to the meeting via telephone. Please be advised there will be a time limit of 5 minutes for those who wish to speak in support of an application and 5 minutes who wish to speak in objection. For example, if more than one person wishes to speak in objection, the time allocation of 5 minutes will be divided between those speakers. There may be also ward councillors in attendance who wish to speak. I'm John Hobson and the chair of this committee today. Also in attendance are Paul Clark and Andy Glossop from Planning, Simon Thompson from Highways, Emma Laughlin from Legal, Chris Long, Georgina Moore and Daniel Johnson from Democratic Services. The other individuals you can see in attendance are councillors who are members of this committee. They will make the decisions on the applications scheduled for today's meeting. Right. Agenda item 2. Apologies for absence. Do we have any?
No apologies have been received, Chair.
Right. Do we have any declarations of interest from members of the committee in respect of the items scheduled for consideration at today's meeting? Councillor Dodds?
Yes, I have a non-pecuniary interest on the Nunthorpe planning application.
Yeah, same as myself. I'm a member of that doctor's surgery.
Well, I'm a member of that practice, but I don't visit Nunthorpe, I visit Middlesbrough. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Agenda item 4. Minutes of the previous meeting. Can we approve the minutes as being a correct record?
Approved, Chair.
Julie
Yes.
Roston said okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. The schedule of planning applications to be considered today depends really on the number of speakers as to how we vary it. But what we're going to do them as they are laid out in the agenda. First one will be the land off Stocksley Road. Second one will be Melrose House. Third one will be Boho X. Now, before I hand over to Andy, can I please ask that all committee members refrain from asking questions until he has finished his presentation. The first item is the land off Stocksley Road. So, Andy, could you please present to us the details of this application?
I'd love Andy to do it, Chair, but unfortunately it's myself doing the doctor's surgery in Melrose. Andy will be dealing with Boho X.
That's fine. That's fine.
I will start sharing my screen, if I may. Can members see that okay?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Rex. Thank you, Chair. The first application before members today is for the erection of a medical centre with associated car parking and landscaping of land off Stocksley Road, Nunthorpe. The application site, the proposal is on the screen before you there. The site is just under half a hectare in size. It includes 13 parking spaces plus motorcycle and cycle parking. As part of the consultation on the application, we received 18 comments, of which 17 were objections. By far, the biggest issue or concern was highway pedestrian safety. As a result of that, we looked at this again, and we went back to the applicant and asked them to look again at the access arrangements, the consequence of which is that the vehicle access to the site was moved about 50 yards further south along Stocksley Road. Originally, the access was at the point on where my mouse is on the screen at the moment, adjacent to the pedestrian access, but it's now been moved further towards the Pool Hospital roundabout. It is, we feel, a more, whilst it was acceptable in the location the application originally came in terms of meeting sight lines, safety requirements, and so forth. We feel that by moving it further south towards the roundabout actually makes it a more robust and a better, more safety and a better junction, and it also separates the pedestrian activity from the vehicular activity. There's also, it also enables, I think one of the comments which came in from the parish council at the time was the potential for community uses on part of the site. And what this access does, it allows that part of that site to come forward more readily for those uses at a future date. In terms of the design of the building, it is in a T-shape, single story, using a mix of brick and cedar cladding with slate roof tiles. I don't think there's really any more I can say about it. It's modern construction. What this proposal does allow, which the existing practice across the border in Redcar, Cleveland, doesn't allow for, there is expansion space allowed for as part of this development. As I can show on the previous screen, what you will see, the doctor's surgery in this general location with potential expansion space to the north for further surgery space and expansion space to the south for potentially for some pharmacy. And they've also included land which can be accommodated additional car parking if needs as part of that expansion. That's not the subject of this application. That would have to be any future application. But what it does do, what this proposal does do, it allows for, it future-proofs the proposal and allows for any future expansion if required. The site itself is not actually, it falls within the Nunthorpe Grange housing allocation in the local plan. Whilst it's not actually referred to within that policy, the policy doesn't explicitly exclude a medical centre. And I think the key issue here is whether the remaining policy criteria set out in that local plan would be hindered or damaged from coming forward. A case could actually be made that the provision of a medical centre actually increases both the sustainability and attractiveness of the allocations of residential development. We did back in 2019, 2018, when we preparing the Nunthorpe Design Code, the Nunthorpe Grange Design Code, we did include provision of a medical centre to reflect some of the concerns we were hearing from the residents of Nunthorpe, and also the discussions we were actually having with surgery about potential relocation. That was included within the design code, which was adopted by the council in January 2019. But by far the biggest issue that we received in terms of the consultation responses was objections to highway and pedestrian safety from the site. As I said originally, the original access was next to the pedestrian access onto Stocksley Road. It was felt that whilst this was acceptable in highways terms, the location could be problematic in terms of having the pedestrians crossing at that point, having to contend with vehicles both on Stocksley Road and accessing and leaving the doctor's surgery. So following further discussions, that was moved. One of the key issues now facing us is actually the pedestrian access into the site. It's been mentioned that there are no footpaths on the eastern side of Stocksley Road adjacent to doctor's surgery. This is correct. There are only bits of the footpath network in place. The main footpath is on the western side of Stocksley Road. Whilst that is, it may be narrower than footpaths which are put in nowadays, it is considered to be satisfactory for purposes. In terms of accessing the site from the east, it is likely that when the housing development comes forward in Nunthorpe Grange, pedestrian activity or pedestrian access will be gained through the housing development onto Gisborough Road that way through potentially a more attractive environment. We have looked, or we have explored the pedestrian access point. There is a pedestrian crossing included as part of the proposal, but this involves drop curbs and tactile paving. It doesn't involve a signalised crossing of the road. Again, as I say, highways have looked at this and it meets safety requirements and meets all required standards. As the next slide shows, Simon may have to come in at some point if I get some of these figures technically incorrect, but the sight lines can be achievable for both the pedestrian access into the site and also the vehicular access. As you can see from this diagram, by moving the vehicular access further south, it actually significantly increased the sight lines to what people perceived as a dangerous junction, dangerous curve in the road further north on Stocksley Road. Part of the problem there is with the sight lines is these photographs hopefully show that these are taken from Google Street View from 2009 and 2012. Unfortunately, we haven't got a more recent photograph, but the state of the hedge has contributed to the potential perception of the poor sight lines. As you can see in 2009 from the top photographs, these photographs were taken approximately at the location of where the pedestrian access point will be into the doctor's surgery. The hedgerows are well kept and sight lines are better. When you look at the southern, the pictures to the bottom of the screen, the hedge is overgrown, sight lines are not as good. So as part of the proposal, we are set as part of the recommendations within the report, we have conditions regarding maintaining the sight lines, and also we have conditions regarding off-street highway works, which include provision of pedestrian crossing. That, Chair, is all I really want to say regarding the application. There are obviously any questions that members have, then either myself or Simon will be more than happy to answer those.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody want to ask Paul any questions? Has anybody got there?
Councillor Cooper, Chair.
Councillor Cooper, were you in for the start of this application?
I came in at 1 o'clock, which is what it says on the front of my documents. It would appear that you've started at 1:15. Yeah, 1:15, I think you started.
No, we started at 1:30.
Chair,
No,
to
that's the
confirm, I
time
think
according to my computer that I came in.
No, what I'm saying is if you haven't heard all of this application, I can't let you vote. If you haven't heard all of it, then I don't know when you
I was
came
in when Paul started to speak, so I think that's all of it, is it not?
That's okay, that's fine. I'm just checking.
Yeah, okay, yes, I have.
Yeah.
Yes, I have heard it.
All right, right. David Cope, you had your hand up.
Yes, Chair. Paul, the footpath access, etc. I know there's a lot of ideas about having footpath on either side, etc. Are you happy with the existing access, if you like, the existing footpaths that we maintain for that? And can I ask what are the proposals if people aren't happy with that? What would be a second opportunity? Thanks.
Obviously, thank you, Councillor. Yes, we believe that the access arrangements are satisfactory and meet the needs. As I alluded to in the presentation, there is the potential for a community use within the loop of the road access road which is being put in. There is discussion that may be a potential new community hall to serve Nunthorpe. Clearly, there are no details in at this moment. We have secured Section 106 contributions from the Great House Farm Development towards provision of such a facility. This is one potential location, and it may well be that when that proposal comes forward, we can look again at pedestrian access. That's something which might be more suitable to serve both facilities in this location. We are also working with the community of Nunthorpe, looking at wider infrastructure needs as part of that. And I think what we can do, we can look at that part of that work and as part of the potential work which Nunthorpe are looking on potentially bringing forward and make a plan as well. So I think there are further opportunities where we can explore some of these issues and hopefully look at how they can be delivered in a more holistic and strategic way to serve the people of Nunthorpe.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else got any questions to ask of Paul? Councillor Cooper?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Paul, these documents that you've shown us show 2 bus stops. However, they're not currently in service. So I've got a couple of questions. One, do we know if they're going to go back into service? Second one is the footpaths that you mentioned. One of them coming down on the same side as this building would go in, stops at the bus stop on your diagrams, and obviously doesn't go all the way to the entrance. Your maps and things are slightly out of date, and when you actually stand at Great Towers Drive and look left and right as a driver would, the traffic coming off the roundabout arrives quite quickly, and traffic coming from the left-hand side arrives quite quickly, because the bend is actually less visible than actually you would think from the diagrams and the pictures. It only takes about 3 seconds for a car to arrive from that bend on your left-hand side to Great Towers Drive. Now, I know you've moved the road further to the right of Great Towers Drive, and I think that was a good move. But I'm concerned now that knowing that there's going to be some housing going in there, that will overuse that road. So I'm wondering if that needs to be rethought. What's your feelings on that, please?
I may need to bring Simon in at some point about some of the highways issues you raised.
Yes, Paul.
But you raised numerous points there. First of all, I'll take the last one about housing development being accessed off of that. Decisions have been taken that this access road will not serve the wider housing development as part of the Nunthorpe Grange development. Nunthorpe Grange, if it comes forward, will be accessed off of the proposed roundabout off of the Nunthorpe bypass. So there will not be housing. My understanding is that the council decided there will be no housing development accessed off of Stocksley Road as part of that development. In terms of bus stops and whether bus services utilise those or not, I think that is by and large in the hands of the bus services themselves in terms of what they decide is and is not viable and feasible for them to operate. We can't, or we have very little powers, I believe, to actually direct that to happen. In terms of the safety of the proximity of the junctions and so forth, I think I'm really going to have to hand over to you, Simon, to deal with those issues in terms of what is and isn't acceptable from a highways term.
Thanks, Paul. Coming in, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. The nearest bus stops are on Gisborough Road, served by frequent services, and they're within 500 metres, which is, it's less than a 5-minute walk, which meets national guidance. So the site is accessible by public transport in accordance with guidance. With regards to sightlines, the sightlines that are proposed meet national standards. The spacing between Great Towers Drive junction and the proposed junction again is 30 metres from centre line to centre line, so that meets national standards. What I would say is, in terms of the sight lines, and Paul alluded to, it's conditioned, and we can have that comfort, and that the area covered by the sight lines is under the control of either the applicant or the authority. So we can ensure that those sight lines are protected in perpetuity and controlled to make sure that there is a sufficient intervisibility between motorists and pedestrians.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Wilson, you got your hand up?
Thanks, Chair. I'm coming back from what Barry said there. I've got to agree with him. That bend is a bit of a blind bend. When you stand on the opposite side of the road, most of the cars going around that bend, they're halfway around the bend before you actually come into sight. That's on the opposite side of the road. You stand in the car, you sat in your car looking to your left or looking to your right, wait for the car coming down. That vehicle's going to be more or less off the bend before you spot it. So in that effect, you're sort of making your turn, you're making your move. The car's going to be on the side of you if you come down 30 miles an hour at the speed limit. I would suggest, I would think, the exit or the entrance would be better off coming off the roundabout which would still serve any future building on that site. To me, it makes a bit more sense because that's like a dog's hind leg. So people turning right or left, either way, they're going to meet that bend, which is, to me, is a blind bend. To me, it's still dangerous to where it is now. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Simon, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I think I'd just say that obviously we're bound to consider the proposals as presented. So, you know, the access has been presented, has been demonstrated with sightlines that meet national guidance. And with regards to coming off Pool Roundabout, I would say that looking at the layout of that roundabout, it wouldn't be technically suitable or achievable to put in an extra arm to serve the development, and it would actually create conflict. You wouldn't get a new arm on that roundabout to meet any design standards whatsoever.
Thank you, Simon. Anybody else got a raised hand? Councillor Branson.
Thank you, Chair. I seem to recollect reading this, that there was an alternative site that was put forward. I can't find it. I've tried to find it, but is there a reason why that wasn't looked at well, or is that something that has other problems with it?
Paul?
If an alternative site was put forward, it would have been as part of one of the representations or objections we'd received. As Simon mentioned, in response to the previous issue about highways, we're here to deal with this application as it is, regardless of whether there are alternative sites available for this or not. We need to assess whether the application before us is one we can support or not as it stands, regardless of whether there are alternative sites which may or may not be better. There may be issues associated with those sites in terms of land ownership. There may be issues associated again with access issues. So obviously, whilst there may be other sites which have been put out there as potential, the applicant has decided this is the site they want to bring forward, and we have to consider.
Okay, right.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, David. Anybody else? Right, nobody else. Right, we do have some people who wish to speak on this application. We'll deal with the applicant is Andrew Cooper, but he's here only for questions. The agent is a man called Mr. Steve Buckley. Are you with us, Mr. Buckley?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
You've got 5 minutes, Mr. Buckley, and our legal representative will monitor your time and advise once your allocation has expired.
It won't take that long.
Sir.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Steve Buckley of Peacock and Smith, planning consultants and agents on the application. I speak on behalf of Assura, who are the company who will help to deliver the building on behalf of the GPs. Also present is Andrew Cooper of Assura, who will be on hand to answer any questions. The scheme will deliver a state-of-the-art GP surgery, which will meet the needs of existing and future local residents of Nunthorpe. It'll allow for more consulting rooms and better waiting rooms and support the practice with their long-term service aspirations. We're delighted with the recommendation of approval. The development team has considered all aspects of the scheme, and there are no outstanding objections to the application from any statutory consultees. Despite a groundswell of support for the principle of the scheme, the only area of concern with the application as submitted was highways. Although the highways officers were content that the proposed access met relevant standards, it was considered that the proposed location now is a better location for the vehicular access point and is further to the south. This has been taken fully on board, and we've worked with officers to change the access point, which also allows for improvements to the pedestrian access. Having worked closely with council officers throughout the plan application process, we'd endorse their recommendation and request that planning permission be granted. As mentioned before, Andrew and myself are on hand to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Anybody want to ask Mr. Buckley any questions? Or indeed, Mr. Cooper? Not Councillor Cooper, Mr. Cooper. No? Nobody. Okay, so we shall carry on. We now have a speaker from Nunthorpe Parish Council, Nunthorpe Parish Council Chairman.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. I think Councillor Cooper, Councillor Coop wishes to speak.
Councillor Coop, do you wish to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to make it clear, as far as I can see, that the existing surgery, which is the other side of the railway line, it is moving from there, just as long as I get the concept of this right. And there's a possibility of perhaps a future pharmacist. Is that correct?
Paul?
Apologies, Chair. I thought that was questions directed to the agent. Yes, it is a relocation of the existing doctor's surgery within the Redcar and Cleveland part of Nunthorpe that will be relocating to this site. As I said at the outset, that site is rather constrained, doesn't have expansion opportunities, and doesn't provide modern up-to-date facilities for the community. The plans do show potential expansion to include a possible pharmacy, but that isn't here at the moment. That is not part of this application. That would have to form part of any future application, and potentially that would have to come before this planning committee for consideration at that time.
Thank you. That's how I understand it. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Right, has anybody got any questions for Mr. Buckley then? No? Okay. So we'll now go on to Mr. Morgan McClintock, Nunthorpe Parish Council Chairman. Are you there, Mr. McClintock? There he was gone.
Just to advise, you need to press star and 6 to unmute your microphone.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Thank you,
five minutes, Mr. McClintock. 5 minutes.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Hobson and members. I'm Morgan McClintock, the chair of Nunthorpe Parish Council. Our position on this is actually very straightforward. I've only got 3 brief comments to make today. First of all, it's important that we say that the Nunthorpe community welcomes the plans to relocate the medical centre to modern premises in this location. We're really grateful for the initiative of the GPs and for the council's support for the project. And we hope very much that today you'll grant the application to authorise construction of the building. I can't stress too much that the parish council strongly supports this and has supported it at all stages of its development. And anything I say today should not in any way suggest that we want to delay the start of construction. The Nunthorpe community is united in wanting the work to start and be finished as soon as possible. So that's the first point. The second one is we're also grateful to Middlesbrough Council and to the GP practice and Assura for taking on board our concerns about the original plans for the access road to the medical centre. We appreciate the time of officers and indeed the additional land provided by Middlesbrough Council, which has transformed an unattractive and potentially rather dangerous turning into what we think is an impressive driveway, very worthy of this important community feature. So in the light of those 2 points, the third one I want to make may seem so minor that you might think we're ungrateful for even mentioning it. But it is an unfortunate fact that the plans before you today, as you've already heard, do not include any provision for a footpath adjacent to the new building. Now, I'll try and explain to you what I mean by this forgotten footpath. As Paul has explained, between the new building and the road, there's a hedge, and the hedge is very, very close to the road. And so there is no space between the hedge and the road for a public footpath. On the other hand, there is space for a footpath on the other side of the hedge, closer to the building. But such a pathway is not on the plans that you have before you at the moment. Now, it's important that you appreciate the result will be that if a patient needs to walk to the doctors from Gisborough Road down the east side of Stocksley Road, just at the point where she is getting tantalisingly close to the building, she can't get any further. The patient then has a choice. The patient can walk on the road just at the point, as you've already heard this afternoon, of maximum danger due to the bend in the road, or the patient can cross the road to the west side, walk the length of the building on the other side of the road, and then cross the road a second time back to the east side at the entrance to the medical centre. So all the parish council is asking is that this forgotten footpath between the hedge and the building is acknowledged as a problem that needs to be resolved. Now, I have to stress we are only asking for a very, very short section of footpath, just the stretch alongside the new building. Unfortunately, the outline document given to you by officers overstates the position of the parish council. The planning department asserts they cannot justify asking for a paved footway all the way between the site of the medical practice to the junction of Stocksley Road and Gisborough Road. But we don't expect that, and we're not asking for that, because there is already either a pavement or an acceptable grass footpath all the way from the junction of Gisborough Road, all the way until you get to the hedge in front of the surgery. So our plea is only for a very, very short length of pathway in front of the building to avoid pedestrians walking on the road or crossing the road twice. And Paul mentioned that maybe we could come back and look at this on a future date, but it does seem daft that while the bulldozers are in, finishing off the area between the hedge and the doctors, that we don't put a footpath in now, rather than come back in a few years' time, dig it all up and say we should have put a footpath and now we're going to put it in. The final point in this is you were informed by the planners that a footpath is not justified because there are only 22 properties on the east side of Stocksley Road. On the other hand, you'll have read a rather different perspective written for you on behalf of the GPs by their transport consultants, BWB. This statement includes a map of Nunthorpe, which shows graphically just how many residents live within a distance of 1 kilometre from the new surgery. The case made by the GPs is that the Chartered Institution of Highways regards 1 kilometre as an acceptable walking distance.
Mr.
So the
McClintock,
GP's map
sorry
shows
to
there
interrupt
are
you, but
very
that's your
many
5
hundreds of
minutes.
us. Okay.
Mr.
They'll be walking
McClintock,
along the east.
finish up,
So-
please.
I'll just finish up by saying that those of us who do not drive a car should not be forgotten. If we arrive on foot, we need a footpath. If we arrive by bus, we need a footpath. So we encourage you to approve this application today, but we also ask you to ensure that a very short section of footpath is no longer forgotten. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. I do. I have to say I share Mr. McClintock's concerns about road safety, but I'm always looking for solutions when I'm looking at these things. And I'm wondering if the parish council would support an application to have the road reduced to a 20-mile-an-hour zone. And if our ward councillors asked for something along those lines, is that something we can consider? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. I don't know who's going to answer this. Is it going to be you, Simon?
I think so, Chair. The changing the speed limit on carriageways would require the support of the police and is a traffic regulation order. So that is a separate process to the granting of planning consent. So would need to be considered outside of this application. Reducing Stocksley Road would also then to a 20-mile-an-hour limit would require a scheme of traffic calming. So you can see it's a piece of work in its own right. And if the ward members and the parish council would wish to progress that, I would suggest that they approach the authority and we deal with it outside of this committee.
Thank you, Simon. Would that be acceptable to the two councillors then and the parish council? Would you take that on to go? Mika, you want to speak?
Yeah, I think that's a really good suggestion, the 20 miles an hour. Am I okay to say my little bit now, John, or do you have to bring me in?
No, not yet. I'll bring you in.
Okay.
Don't worry. Right, okay. Right.
Yeah, can I just add, Chair? Sorry, Councillor Athmell.
Sorry, John, I can't see a picture, so I don't know you're there, son. Right, go on, yes, just add your little bit.
With regards to the speed limit and the reduction, we have had a working group that involved members of the community groups and the ward councillors, because Stocksley Road itself has been a highlighted problem. Mr. Farnham from Highways has been dealing with that, but it seems that what we've been told is correct, and the reduction of any speed limit is going to be difficult. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Councillor Branson.
Thank you, Chair. Is it not possible to have a reduction in the speed limit just around the entrance area? Is that rather like you have schools where you don't control the whole of the road at 20, but you just have that bit where you have the traffic problem? Okay.
Simon?
I think the extent of the speed limit change is irrelevant. The basic fact is that it's a traffic regulation order and would need to be dealt with outside of this committee, and speaking to the police and other relevant officers to make the speed limit self-enforcing as you do with 20 limits. So it is something that needs to be discussed outside of this committee, and you couldn't apply a condition to this consent because there is no certainty that it could proceed.
Thank you. Could we not impose a condition on this application that the applicant puts that footpath in? Paul?
We could do, Chair, but that footpath goes to nowhere because whilst I hear what Councillor McClintock is saying for the parish council, it's just leading to a grass verge, and that in itself could be quite dangerous. You're leading somebody to a footpath which doesn't actually exist. I think, Simon may know more about this tonight. I think the best thing to do is direct people across the road to where there is a footpath on the western side. It is a bit of a mixed bag on the eastern side in terms of there is some footpath, there aren't some footpaths, it is grass verge. The grass verges themselves aren't very wide, and potentially they won't be particularly safe themselves. So I think it's quite dangerous to do that and lead people to that potential route. And as I said during my presentation, the intention will be, but obviously it can't be done now, but certainly as the housing development comes forward, we will be looking to take that link through through the development site, through more attractive environment and a safer environment for people. But we will still maintain that pedestrian link across Stokesley Road for people coming pedestrian-wise from the west.
Right. Thank you, Paul. Okay. Right, we'll carry on. We've got two ward councillors to speak. We've got Mika Smiles from Nunthorpe. We've got John Rathmell from Nunthorpe. We'll do the gentleman thing. We'll go ladies first. Your turn, Mika.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to offer my full support of this application. Everybody in Nunthorpe knows that the team of doctors is brilliant. The staff are brilliant, but the current facility is just not fit for purpose. It's on 2 levels. The appointment rooms, some of them are upstairs. The waiting room is small, and there's actually no allocated parking whatsoever. But this new plan, it shows a really modern surgery, and I think it's going to be a really fantastic addition and much needed in Nunthorpe. Something else I wanted to quickly touch on is we know that what we see today are actually revised plans, and the officers and the developers have actually gone above and beyond to work with the parish council to move that access point along. The original plans were safe. However, this new access makes it even safer. And it also throws up the possibility of a community garden or something like that in the sort of void area, which I think would be brilliant. And I think something else, I've spoken to planning officers about this, and I know that they'll continue to work with the community to hopefully improve the surrounding paths and cycle access. I'm confident that is something that they will do. And I know that the current developers would be keen to help as well. So I just wanted to kind of set that out briefly, and I really hope that the planning committee approve this application today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Smiles. Councillor Rathmell?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I actually agree with the comments and objections that have been raised and observations by Mr McClintock and Councillor Smiles. There is an issue with regards to the missing footpath. One thing I have picked up on is the fact that the officers stated that the 2 junctions, that for Great Towers Drive and the long driveway for the medical centre, which seems to be the one that's causing a lot of objections, there's a 30-metre distance from centre line to centre line. So it's not as if there's even a 30-metre stretch between the two start and finish of each junction. And that should, in my opinion, looking at the road, be a consideration. The actual doctor's surgery, that's fantastic, that's great. My only concern there is the fact that where the current location is, they rely heavily on the parking on the front, the parking on the side streets, and the overflow car park down the side of the shops. The plans that we see before us, I don't feel, by the time you include staff, sufficient car parking for members of the public to use. And as we've heard, it's an ageing population. It's out on the end and at the edge of Nunthorpe now in comparison to its current location. So there's a presumption more people will drive. And as two members of this committee have indicated, the member from Martin West and the member from Acklam, they are members of this same medical centre group. So therefore, there's a presumption, as has happened previously, that patients can be sent between the two. So it would be increasing the actual traffic flow. And therefore, I would presume we would need to see the expanded car parking spaces first, so we don't have that impact that's hit other sites. When you look at the Bluebell Medical Centre in Trimdon, the roundabout and the surrounding roads have become like the National Car Park. But the actual medical centre itself is fantastic. Extending the car park isn't going to do any negative damages to the practice. It's actually going to complement, should they do expand in the future. The groundwork's already been done, and that's what I would like to see, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Right. Can we expand the car parking, Paul, if we need to? There is land there, isn't there? If we found it was required.
There is land in council ownership. At the moment, it is the only potential development we're seeing on the Nunthorpe Grange site. So there is actual land there, but I'm sure Simon will point you to the fact that the standards which they are providing for are the required standards, and they meet the standards. There isn't a requirement for any further. I think one of the advantages of the design of the scheme is that for the way that the access road is, it will actually discourage people from parking on Stocksley Road itself. Because you have got quite a lengthy access road there, which if people drive into the car park and they can't find space, then potentially there may be something there they can park away from other roads. But there is expansion space built into the development for car parking. Clearly, if more land is required, then that's negotiation between the applicant and the council in terms of providing that land. But we're here to consider it as it is. The parking meets the required standards, but it is an option in the future if it is decided that more car parking is actually needed. But it might point to being a less sustainable option for the practice.
Right, thank you, Paul. Has anybody else got any questions they'd like to ask before we get down to making a decision? I can't see any hands up anywhere. Okay. So, Paul, if you'd like to read out the recommendation in the report, just so we know what we're dealing with, please. Can't hear you, Paul.
Paul, you're on mute.
Apologies. The recommendation, Chair, is for approval subject to conditions.
Right, thank you very much. Okay. So we'll now open it up to the committee. Has anybody got any proposals they'd like to bring forward? Nobody. Sorry? Councillor Thompson, I can see you waving, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I don't see no reason to refuse this application, so I'm happy to approve it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Dodds, you will second that? Councillor Dodds, you're on mute.
I know it keeps clicking itself. Oh, yes, I would second that. As somebody mentioned that, the people that attend the Borough Road surgery may attend the one in Nunthorpe. That's very rare. We often get people from Nunthorpe coming to Borough Road because there's no parking in Nunthorpe where they are now. So I would never expect to go to Nunthorpe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else got anything to say? Councillor Nugent.
I would just like to agree. I think it should go ahead. The surgery should go ahead. The only concern of mine would be the safety or the footpath concern. Apart from that, I agree that it's okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else got anything to say? Councillor Cope?
Thank you, Chair. No, I would agree with that. My only concern, as mentioned before, was the footpath. I think that has been addressed. I understand what Councillor McClintock says, and perhaps that could be looked at in the future, because if you look at the map, there is no actual access within the site. But other than that, I do agree. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Okay. So we'll go to a vote. The only problem at the moment is now.
Councillor Branson.
Councillor Branson, you wish to speak?
Very briefly, yes, I support the application. I think that if you've got a crossing there, you're probably going to have some kind of speed limit either side of it. I know that's a separate issue, but I think that if that's done, that will make it that bit safer. But I would support.
Right, thank you. Right, we'll go to a vote. The thing is now, Councillor Garvey, you came in late, so obviously you can't take part in this vote. You understand? Legally, if you don't hear all the application, you can't go. So it's going to be a simple ring. I shall read people's names out, and we need a for, against, or an abstain. Start with myself, Councillor Hobson, and I'm for. Councillor Cope?
For, Chair.
Councillor Cooper?
For, Chair.
Councillor Branson?
For, Chair.
Councillor Dodds?
For.
Councillor Garvey can't vote. Councillor Nugent?
For, Chair.
Councillor Ostron? Councillor Thompson?
For.
And Councillor Wilson? Thank you, councillors. Was that unanimous?
Yeah, Chair, I can confirm 9 of the 10 members voted to approve the application and 1 abstained. Thank you,
Okay.
Chair.
So I can confirm that following the vote, the decision of the committee is to approve this planning application. Right, thank you very much. We'll now turn to rubbish, aren't they? We'll turn to the second application, which is Melrose House. Are you doing it, Paul, or is Andy doing it?
I'm doing it, Chair, and you'll be glad.
Okay, so before Paul starts, can I just ask that if there's any questions for him, can we wait till the very end, till he's finished all his spiel? Okay, Paul, fire away.
You'll be glad to know, Chair, I'm not proposing to take too long on this one. Can members see my screen okay?
I can, Paul, yes.
Okay, the application before us today is for the site of the former Melrose House on Melrose Street, and it's for the erection of an office building with associated access, car and cycle parking, services and landscaping. The application, the site is the Melrose House, if you members may be aware, has been cleared, so it's a vacant site now. Formerly, the Melrose House site was just to the south of Centre Square, opposite Fountains Court. The plans before you show its location with regards to Centre Square. The blue box, the blue lines denote the 2 buildings which have already been built as part of the Centre Square development. These were built by the same applicant. The proposal before you today is for about 4,300 square metres of Grade A office space, includes 72 parking spaces. As part of the proposals, as you will see on the image on the right-hand side there, There's an existing pedestrian cycleway linking Borough Road with Russell Street, which goes between the application site and the existing housing there. And what this proposal will do is it will actually close the vehicular access along Grange Road at the red point there, making it a safer cyclist and pedestrian route, a more attractive cyclist pedestrian route, and also protecting the environment of the residential site to the east. So there'll be no through route there. So any traffic coming towards Mima, coming into this site, coming to Fountains Court and so forth, will have to come through through Melrose Street and Long Grange Road that way. It will take that traffic which came through this route out of the way, therefore making it a safer, better proposal. There are 18 neighbour consultations on this application, and we received no responses to the consultation. So there are no objections to the proposal. The main considerations for members are the principle of the development, the economic considerations, design of the scheme, its impact upon nearby buildings, uses and residential amenity, and its impact upon the highway network. But the principle of the use, as can be seen on the main plan there, well, it's within the town centre, formerly an office building. Its location where such uses are acceptable. It meets the what the council are trying to achieve and deliver in terms of economic growth, its aspirations for the town centre and development of the town centre. It adds the opportunities for Grade A office space within the town, enhancing Middlesbrough's economic prospects, quite important. In terms of design, this slide shows the elevations. This is reflective of the other centre square buildings. Masonry finish on the ground floor with upper floors predominantly glass. I think this image shows it probably better. I believe this image is in the pack that members received in terms of the application part of our papers. The scale of the building is commensurate with the previous Melrose House building. It's slightly different. If I can go back to the first slide I showed members. Previously, Melrose House, as you can see on the aerial photograph, occupied virtually the whole of the site. This building just occupies the corner between Grange Road and Melrose Street. It is a bit closer to the office development at Fountains Court, but you've got two office developments opposite each other. It's still 35 metres away for that. Equally, it's been drawn back away from the housing onto, I believe it's Jedburgh Road. So it's been drawn back from there, so it's further away from these properties than Melrose House was. It is a bit closer to those on the opposite side of Melrose Street, but there is a significant tree belt which is separating the two. So members, that is all I really want to say about the application. The recommendation there is for approval, and I'll stop sharing my screen and open it to any questions.
Right. Anybody got any questions for Paul? Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. As a private building, this will require private bins, a biffer or something like that. Will they be all right going in and out of where those up and down bollards are shown, or is there going to be another entry-exit point for them? Thank you.
I believe it will have been designed to allow the refuse for collection, so that would have been designed in as part of a scheme, and it would have formed part of consultations with refuge and other organisations and so forth. So yes, it will be capable of accommodating and refuse trucks to deal with that.
Anybody else got anything to say? Anybody want to ask anything of Simon, of the transport man?
Can I ask, Chair? I've tried to wave my hand around.
I'm terribly sorry. You shouldn't be sat on the end. With your white beard and things like that, you disappear into my white outside of my screen. Go ahead,
Yeah,
David.
I blend into the background, Chair. No,
That's what I meant to say. Yes.
Absolutely, I blend in the background. As this is a sort of replacement for an existing building, and you say that there's actually going to be more spaces round it, etc. It is virtually like for like, and looking at the plans, it does look pretty good. As far as I can see, this is a perfect fit into the town centre. I don't see anything to detract from it, and there's been no complaints. So I just think if it's a perfect thing to expand the town centre. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else got anything to say? Okay, so we'll carry on. Now, we do have an agent. I don't know whether, is this agent with us today? Sarah Sabin, is she there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You've got 5 minutes, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it brief.
Okay.
Firstly, we'd just like to outline the vision for 6 Centre Square. This will be a brief overview of what we've documented in the application, and then we'll be happy to take any questions you may have. Formerly the site of Melrose House, a disused office building which was demolished as it was no longer fit for purpose. This planning application proposes a replacement Grade A office building to bring the site back into economic use for the town. As an extension of Centre Square, this will be the 3rd building to be constructed and is an extension to the existing master plan. The building meets the same high standards of 1 and 2 Centre Square. It will have a stunning facade treatment with floor-to-ceiling glazing to enhance the internal environment. Large open floor plates have been designed to meet the latest British Council for Officers guidance, which creates flexibility for future tenants by allowing fit-outs to embrace new working practices as well as adaptability for the future, giving the building longevity. It is a common misconception that there is not a demand for office space within Middlesbrough Town Centre due to the number of empty units. However, this isn't the case. It's just that those empty units are not fit for purpose, and that even with extensive investment to improve them, they wouldn't meet the standards of a modern Grade A office and the requirements of most modern occupiers. 1 and 2 Centre Square have demonstrated that there is a market for these high quality developments in the town. Circa 85% of the 100,000 square foot that was available is now let to varying tenants, including those in digital and professional sectors. It's worth pointing out that these lettings were made during the global pandemic, which has seen significant change in the way we work, yet the flexibility within the design has ensured that they can meet the changing needs for business. Although 6 Centre Square has been proposed as a speculative office building by the developer, they are currently in discussions for a pre-let of over 60% of this building. Hopefully that will address some of the questions you may have had on the scheme, but I remain happy to answer anything further that you may have.
Thank you, Sarah.
Chair. Thank you.
Anybody got any questions for Sarah? Nothing? David Cope, hiding again. Councillor Cope.
What can we say, Chair? Yeah, I'm just interested in the size of the units within your letting, because as a previous tenant to another place in Middlesbrough some time ago, if you were wanting, say, if there was a distinct lack of places, what sort of size are you aiming at? Are you aiming at the small business which may only want 500 to 1,000, or you're mainly aiming at larger businesses? Thank you.
Thank you. It's flexible. I think obviously the way the buildings are designed, and I think this is demonstrated in buildings 1 and 2 as well, they could be let to a single large tenant, but they're also capable of being split down into some of the flexibility in the design. Minimising the internal structure allows us to partition off smaller areas and provide those smaller units. So that is the main crux of it, is to be as flexible as possible.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, Councillor Cope. Councillor Thompson, you got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's not very clear on the picture, but can I just ask, does it go anywhere near the pond? Thank you, Chair.
No, the pond is on the main Centre Square site. This is the old Melrose House, so it's to the south of Fountains Court.
It is. Councillor Thompson's gone. We've lost her.
I was having problems there with my video. Thank you. Yeah,
Right.
that clarifies it. Thank you.
Anybody else got any questions? No.
I was
Not
frozen
even
out
David
there,
Cook,
so I
right.
missed the last, whoever spoke last, I missed whatever was said. I'm sorry, I was frozen out.
Would you like to say it again? Like to say it again, Janet, please.
Which one did you?
You
What was the question?
you asked where it was situated.
Yeah, I was
Whether
just asking if
it
it
was
was
near
near
the
the pond. Yeah,
And Sarah Sabin came back and said, no, it's not.
yeah.
Right. Okay. That explain it, Councillor Dodds?
It does. It's the old Melrose House where I used to go for my IT
Yes.
training years ago, and the building was crumbling. It was
yeah.
time it was demolished. Thank you.
Councillor Nugent, have you got your hand up? No? Okay. Scratching your head. Right. Anybody else got any questions? No. So, Paul, if you read out the recommendation again, we will.
Certainly, Chair. The recommendation is to approve with conditions.
Okay. So we'll now go to committee. Does anyone recommending anything? Councillor Cope, your hand is up again.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would want to propose that we accept this with the appropriate conditions, because I think it would be a great benefit to the town. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Garvey?
Yeah, I'd like to second that, please, Chair.
Anybody else have anything to say on it? Councillor Dodds?
I would second it too. I think it's a really lovely building after the rubbishy one that they've demolished. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Wilson, was your hand up? No? Okay. Anybody else got anything to say? No. Okay. So we'll go to a vote again. Straightforward, for, against, or abstain. We'll start with me. Councillor Hobson, I'm for. Councillor Cope?
For, Chair.
Councillor Cooper?
Oh, Chair.
Councillor Branson?
For, Chair.
Councillor Dodds?
For, Chair.
Councillor Garvey, you can vote this time.
For, Chair, thank you.
Councillor Nugent?
For, Chair.
Councillor Rostron? Can't hear you, Julie. For? Sorry, did you say for?
I did.
Yeah, you did, good. Councillor Thompson?
For.
Councillor Wilson? Right. Okay, how did we score, Georgina?
That's all 10 members have voted to approve the application, Chair.
Okay, so I can now confirm that following the decision of the committee, it was to approve this application. So thank you very much, everybody. We now go on to the last one, which is Boho X. And this is going to be delivered to us by Andy Glossop. Over to you, Andy.
Thank you, Chair. Just sharing the screen there. Hopefully it will work. Members, did that come up for members?
Not yet. There it is.
Is it there?
Yeah.
Okay. So, just bear with me 1 second, Chair. Sorry about this. It's just going slow.
It's okay.
Okay, so yeah, planning permission. It's sought for this proposed 7-storey office building. It's on Gosford Street in Middlesbrough. The proposed building is shown to incorporate offices on all the floors apart from the upper floor, a cafe, gym, swimming pool at ground floor, as well as the sort of main core of the building. Bar and event space and a lecture theatre with an outdoor terrace and sort of landscaping on the 6th floor. It's got ancillary cycle store, plant room and bits and pieces, as well as covering public realm to the front and around the building, and the green sort of public space out the front of the building. The application site is located to the north of Middlesbrough Town Centre, and it's within the area that we know historically as St Hilda's. It's bound by Gosford Street to the south, so we can see this on the plan. It's got Feversham Street to the north, Boho 4, which is the old historic bank to the right hand side to the east, and it's bound by the Boho 1's temporary car park to the west of the site. This is effectively, Chair, a resubmission of the previous scheme for Boho X, which was working through the process when I think it was withdrawn, and that was following the start, I think, of the COVID pandemic, and it was understood to have prompted a review at that time of the original design. The revised design has been developed to be reduced in overall height from what that previous proposal to be what I would say of a more appropriate scale for this area and size for this area, but also I think from the applicant's perspective to have ancillary features which are understood to be attractive to the emerging office market. So in policy terms, this site is within the wider town centre area. It's within the area that's defined as being or what's called Boho, but the Boho area. And within this area, office development is supported. It's in line with policy requirements. Policy detail and the Middlehaven Development Framework document, which has been produced for this area, it was updated in 2012, that document. And those requirements or those documents require high quality, sustainable development, which doesn't really unduly affect amenity of surrounding uses. The development framework document promotes a flexible approach to mixed use development, and it looks to re-establish the historic grid pattern of the area. And the updated master plan also strives for more of a commercial focus than it previously did, and focuses on offices, leisure, education as part of a mixed regeneration scheme for this area. So in terms of the site, it's you can see from the photographs hopefully that are coming through, it's a cleared area. It was previously developed land, and these photographs just kind of put it in roughly its current context. They are slightly out of date. The image that's been shown just on the right hand side where there's a gravel car park that's currently been built on at the moment. This is a view looking towards the site pretty much from the position of the old town hall, and the buildings that you see with the numbers above, that's just giving a bit of reflection of the scale of the building, the sort of story numbers of those buildings which are sort of closest to where this application site is. That car park that I mentioned, so the car park that's on the right hand side here, because the proposed Boho building straight in front of is on the grassed space. The car park to the right has been approved for development. There's two schemes associated with that area. One is Boho 8, and that's under construction. I think that's a council scheme, and the other one is a 13 scheme of apartments which was approved also, and those two will effectively face onto this proposed development site. Given the proposed use is in line with the master plan and local plan policy, the key considerations really come down to the design and the associated impacts of this scheme. So these are all detailed within the reports. I don't particularly want to pick up on all the aspects because there's quite a lot and they're well detailed within the reports, but I do want to pick up with two elements, the key aspects really, which are heritage considerations and the highway related matters. So as always, we can pick up on anything that members wish to question after we've presented. Simon will pick up on the highway aspects following me, Chair. So from a heritage perspective, the way in which we're required to consider heritage is very specific in that we have to understand what the significance and setting of the heritage asset is. So whether it's a building or an area or structure, we have to understand why they're important before we can decide what the impact on them is likely to be. It's not that just the fact that it's old or it's got a certain setting is necessarily the key issue to it being a building of heritage value. or a structure or other item of heritage value. Comments were submitted in respect to the consultation process. They're detailed within the report. The main matters raised from a historic perspective were from Historic England and the Friends of the Stockton and Darlington Railway. The Council's Conservation Officer has also echoed the comments made by Historic England. And the comments advise that this area has the historic grid pattern, and it suggests that this is of heritage value, and although it's a non-designated heritage asset, it remains to be very important. It relates to the grid pattern relates to the origins of Middlesbrough, which was established around the port of Middlesbrough and the associated Middlesbrough branch line of the Stockton and Darlington Railway. And as well as that, this gridiron pattern is understood to be an early use of the American gridiron system. And these things really combine to make it what is understood to be the first planned railway town. So it has that level of significance. National guidance advises us in terms of heritage and considerations around heritage. It suggests that great weight should be given to the conservation of heritage assets, regardless of whether any harm to their significance is less than substantial. So even sort of low impacts, great weight should be given to them, whether it's a low impact or not. And whether directly or indirectly it will affect non-designated heritage assets, which is the gridiron pattern in this instance. Its national guidance suggests that a balanced judgment will be required to having regard of the scale of any harm or the loss of any significance of the heritage asset. So the report kind of goes into a lot of detail on these things, but I'll touch on some of the key bits. So we've got the historic quarter of, which is a conservation area near to the site. We've got the application site marked on the image, and we've got the conservation boundary marked on the image there. This is because of the nature of the conservation area, the main views from within the conservation area, this building wouldn't affect those because they're very much of the buildings fronting onto the streets in Exchange Square, Zetland Street and Queen Square. And the raised railway line cuts off a lot of views of this building from the conservation area to the south of the railway line. The main view of the proposed building and site from within the conservation area is going to be from the Gosford Street Queen's Terrace junction, and the images show an existing and computer generated comparison of the change that would happen at this point if the application were approved and the development were built. And this is just kind of by way of example really, and how it will affect the buildings and then the conservation area or the conservation area's character. The setting is within of the conservation area. It's within a town centre. There's other big structures and buildings within the town centre, and very much moving from one area of the town centre to another, the character changes quite significantly. So it's felt that the development of Middlehaven and this building in particular that's been considered today, that this is not really significantly different from the other changes that we see around the town centre on other areas adjacent to the conservation area. The report discusses the relationship of the closest listed buildings and structures and the significance and setting of those buildings. Some of the closest ones are marked with the yellow circles on the image. The town hall is arguably the closest one in terms of the impacts, because it kind of forms the axis to this whole Middlehaven area. And once upon a time there was North Street, South Street, West Street and East Street, which form the axis leading up to the town hall. The three buildings on that you can see on the bottom right, well, there's more further to the south going into the conservation area, and they all very much look onto sort of Queen's Square, Queen's Terrace, Queen's Square and Cleveland Street. So it's the old town hall is the most prominent one in this location. And the relevance of that really is relating to the gridiron aspects of the old street layout. And what members will see from this slide is that where South Street used to exist running up to the town hall from the corner of Gosford Street near to the police station, South Street's been removed for some time now. It's not actually there. It's an element of the old gridiron that's disappeared. So it's considered that this proposal is not really going to affect the significance of other listed buildings in this area, and that's really mainly due to the separation that's involved between the sites. The town hall's at a high point here. the Boho X proposal is at a slightly lower point. So the Customs House and the old Captain Cook pub are further off to the north, kind of, if you like, over the hill of this from this side of the St Hilda's area. But they also front onto their own little streets, so it's not affecting the setting of those buildings. So turning to the undesignated heritage asset, which is the former gridiron layout of Middlehaven, we can see from the historical mapping that the gridiron was really a strong characteristic of this area. You know, it's got its main axis that I've mentioned. There was a secondary hierarchy of roads like Feversham Street and Suffield Street, which are just to the north of the application site. And then there was the smaller sort of what I call the third tier roads within Middlehaven as well. And the existing situation here, obviously, is that a lot of this has been lost. It is still visible and it is still understandable that there was a gridiron pattern here, but a great amount of the smaller tier roads have been lost. The gridiron of Middlehaven needs to be considered as well in the context of the whole Middlehaven area, the whole Middlehaven site here, and recognition also has to be that we assess each application on its own merits, which is a little bit difficult because it'd be nice to consider the whole of Middlehaven developing all out at the same time, but we haven't got that luxury. Historic England's and other comments received suggest that the proposal should really take the opportunity to better align to the gridiron development principles by fronting this building onto South Street, which would have been onto one of the former main routes into this area, be of a scale a bit more commensurate with the former development of Middlehaven, so lower in height, and should really not introduce the non-conforming diagonal route that it proposes. So if I just jump onto, this is the proposed building on the site. The proposal seeks really to provide its frontage onto what is an extended Albert Street. So this is Albert Street running into Gosford Street along here, and it's looking to produce a pedestrianised route across the front of Boho X. At the back of Boho X is the plant room, and what's indicated on here is this is where South Street would have once ran, and it leaves space effectively for South Street potentially to be re-provided in the future, although that's not part of this specific scheme. I think arguably, looking at the South Street discussion around whether it should front South Street or not, you know, we have raised these issues with the agent, and they're satisfied that the scheme is the best fit for the what's required out of the development and in the nature of what's there at the moment on site. If we look at South Street, the views to the west of South Street, so if Boho X was facing onto the former South Street area, it would essentially be looking at the industrial side of Riverside Park and Stockton Street and the like, across what is at the moment wasteland and a temporary car park. So it's not a particularly attractive frontage for what is intended to be a significant new building to attract people into this area. And it's also understood, Chair, that this building is looking at creating a cluster of buildings for the digital industries in this area. And Boho 1 and Boho 8 are some of the key buildings within that cluster. And this blue arrow on the plan which we've got here shows where those buildings effectively, where people come out of those buildings at the northern side of the buildings. And so this helps to create a cluster into this area. Fronting Boho X onto the other side, onto South Street, the South Street area, would effectively start to separate where these entrances are. And it's felt, I think, from an officer perspective, that really, you know, these buildings and these uses within the buildings need the greatest chance of success, if that makes sense. Albert Street also serves to be the most direct route from the train station to Boho 1 and Boho 8 and Boho X into this area. So it joins the rail station and Middlesbrough's digital cluster. And although, you know, Albert Street at the moment is not of great significance as a route, at the moment, it's likely to prove to be much more significant in the future, and this scheme will provide Albert Street with a pedestrianised extension into the Middlehaven area with some very high quality public realm, and it's considered this is going to have quite a lot of benefits in terms of placemaking which in turn again supports a high quality environment and offer for people coming into this area. In view of these considerations, it's considered that the overall proposal is going to have some positive and some negative impacts on heritage, specifically the grid iron layout, which is a non-designated heritage asset. Specifically, to create, it's going to increase activity into this area, and it'll support further development of the Middlehaven area. And these two aspects are really key to the wider benefits that this area can gain from this scheme, and the heritage within this area can obviously gain from those elements as well, because the heritage in this area has been somewhat left behind over recent years. The grid iron aspect of Middlehaven needs to be considered as a whole, but as applications are determined on a site-by-site basis, this is challenging. And importantly, I think it's worth saying that accepting this proposal, which does have an aspect of supporting grid iron principles, but also has an aspect moving away from them. The grid iron principles for the wider Middlehaven area, any future schemes coming in, we're potentially going to have to look at them in more detail effectively to make sure that we don't lose extensive amounts of the ability of grid iron, and we don't prevent the opportunity to reintroduce grid iron. So there'll be things that we can look forward to other schemes as they come in. So that's kind of really a run through, Chair, the heritage aspects, which are, like I say, they're in the report in greater detail. But if I may, I'll pass over to Simon to just talk through the highway matters.
Yes, that's fine, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, thank you. I think it is quite difficult for members in seeing a number of planning applications individually in the area to understand how they fit in with each other, and clearly the Middlehaven area is going to continue to see a large amount of redevelopment in the future. So I thought it'd be useful just to provide a bit of background that these schemes and highway works are connecting to each other, and they are creating a strategy and new routes. So for instance, to the west of the site, we've got the junction of Stockton Street and North Street, and you will notice that there's a new signalised junction has been installed in that area in the past few months. So that provides pedestrian cycle facilities and connects through to Sainsbury's and Newport Road. To the east of the site, you've got the Lower Feversham Street and Cleveland Street junction. We've recently completed there a new 3-arm signal control junction with pedestrian cycle facilities. So that extends Winwood Way through past Middlesbrough College and will connect then pedestrian cycle connectivity into Feversham Street, again leading into the Middlehaven area. Sussex Street becomes a strategic north-south pedestrian cycle route because it connects through from the town centre, Linthorpe Road, the rail station, and again into Middlehaven. The work that's been undertaken by 13 on their scheme includes the widening of the footway up there, so again providing additional facilities that will connect in Boho X and the wider Middlehaven area. Albert Street extension will provide another area of pedestrian cycle connectivity, which will feed back to the rail station, and then Albert Road, Centre Square, and the university. So again, providing another direct high quality route into the area. The general aim and approach that's been taken with Middlehaven is that vehicles are being pushed to the outer edges. So we've got routes like Stockton Street, Vulcan Street, Cleveland Street becoming much more strategic or having more of a function of moving traffic. And then within the development, particularly, thinking about the importance of the historic buildings Andy talks about, like the old town hall, the traffic movements around those are minimised as much as possible to create high quality areas of public realm and public space to reflect the setting of these buildings. Specifically on these proposals, what you'll see is it is proposed to close for vehicles a section of Gosford Street between Sussex Street and Albert Street. If you can just bring the site plan back up there, Andy, please. And it's envisaged that that will cease to become a through route for traffic, but servicing traffic and emergency vehicles will still be able to access the area. So it will read like an area of public realm with managed vehicular access, and that's comparable to, say, Corporation Road running through the middle of town, where you have bollards and managed access. So servicing can still occur for buildings like Boho X, but on the whole, it seeks to change the nature of it so it becomes more of a public space. And other than that, I don't really have a lot more to say, other than to say that these schemes, as you can see, clearly are connecting into each other.
Thank you, Simon. Right, does anyone have any questions for either Simon or Andy?
Chair, could I possibly
Yeah.
come in there? Sorry, we've received a message to advise that with regards to the application for the land off Stocksley Road application, that councillors Rostron and councillor Wilson's votes couldn't be heard. So I was just wondering if those two councillors could confirm their votes in respect of that application, please.
Yeah, I'm for it, Georgina.
Yeah, I'm for as
Right.
well.
Right, thank you for confirming that.
Right, thank you. Right, anybody got any questions for Andy or Simon? Janet, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's, I'm all for new buildings getting constructed within Middlesbrough. My concern is there's going to be an increase of traffic for these buildings. So is there any proposals to increase parking within the central Middlesbrough? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Janet. Simon?
I suppose the parking strategies will be picked up as part of wider master planning that is yet to come forward in a detailed form. There are a number of there are parking documents at the moment that establish that there is sufficient parking capacity within existing town centre car parks. We basically have a surplus of car parking at the moment, and we haven't reached that critical mass where you've got the quantum of development that requires significant provision of further car parking. But yes, we are considering that and looking into it.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Cooper?
Thank you, Chair. I've got to admit I'm a bit confused with all these bohos and the consultations that have been happening. The only consultation I went to was for the Twin Towers, and I understand that went the distance because of the heights. I might be wrong about that. But the last time I remember talking to the mayor about them, we were coming back down to a 2 or 3 story building, and now here we are talking about a 7-story building. So is the site we're talking about now where the Twin Towers is going to be, or is this something totally different? Thank you, Chair.
Andy?
Thank you, Chair. The original Boho X scheme that came in was, I think, about 20 stories, and that's obviously this has replaced that. This is the same building, not the same building, the same proposal, different building. So it's gone down from sort of 20 stories down to 7. I've never heard that it was going to be 2 or 3 stories, so I don't know. Obviously, you'll probably get privy to more information than me sometimes, or discussions, but the Twin Towers that I think you're referring to, I understand were 2 potential residential towers, which I believe were on the next site to the west. They've not come into planning yet, so they've not had any sort of considerations from the collective local planning authority. But I believe that's that was indicated on land to the west, but I'm not sure what the position of that is, to be honest. It's not something that planning are involved with. I think it's probably our regen team and possibly the mayor that would pick that up.
Thanks, Andy. Councillor Cope and Councillor Branson.
Thank you, Chair. I might have noticed I've gone on about the old town hall on many occasions, and I think with the towns fund that we just got in, that will hopefully bring that into fruition. this land has been abandoned for years. It was knocked down many years ago and just left and in an appalling state. So it's been talked about for at least 40 years about what they're going to do to this and what they're going to do that. And I think this is a good progression of that. It's a good thing to build it forward. I did have concerns about it, but looking at the plans, etc., as long as you can see, and I understand you can from the side, you'll be able to see towards where the town hall in, which is, I think, should be a focus on the area. I do share the problems about the grid pattern. I think the gridiron pattern was part of Middlesbrough, but in many years ago, the area was destroyed, much to the detriment, I believe, of Middlesbrough. I understand where English Heritage and others are coming from, but I think this really is to enhance it. Simon, you did say earlier on about you could bring South Street back in some sort of form. Could that be a footpath or would that be a road? I'll just be interested in that too. You can show where the grid iron pattern was in. Is that going to be a road or is it going to be something like a footpath? Thank you.
Simon?
Thank you. Each scheme is obviously taken on its merit, but the discussions we will have with developers as they come forward, our view is that it should be more of a pedestrian cycle type access, and we keep the vehicles, as I say, pushed to the outside. And then you can see how the town hall, historic town hall, almost becomes the centre of the face of a clock, with high quality routes feeding out from that. So it does become the centre of a new area of regeneration.
Good. I think that would be a benefit from that.
Councillor Branson?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to say, yes, I do welcome development. I also actually rather like the diagonal walkway that gives you a view of the town hall. I don't think we need to be completely and totally tied to the kind of square pattern system. I think a little bit of new thinking does not go amiss. My only concerns with all of this, there's a lot of people moving into this area from what I can see, which again is not a bad thing. But we need to be aware that we've got adequate public transport, because it does seem to me that your nearest transport is at the railway station, or more realistically, maybe at the bus station. That's quite a distance away, unless you've got a regular service going up Cleveland Street or somewhere like that. Now, I know that we don't have the same kind of control over public transport as we had in the past. But presumably, we are making arrangements to make sure that there is some public transport available here. Otherwise, I can see you're going to have large numbers of people going back and forward to the bus station. Thank you.
Simon, can you answer that, please?
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. It is challenging at the moment, and the schemes that have come forward are sort of the forerunners. They're in early, and they're in locations which are within walking distance of the bus station and the rail station. But as further development comes forward, you will get, as we say again, to a critical mass where we will be able to work much more proactively and get much more interest from the bus operators.
Thank you, Simon. Right, anybody got any more questions for either Andy or Simon? Oh, sorry, Councillor Garvey.
Question, Chair, more of a statement. That area itself, I've visited a few times over the last few months. It does seem as the derelict feeling, and that sort of contributes to the antisocial behaviour of fly tip and the old town hall is seeing. And I think looking at the plans of this building, and I'm not a fan of building for building's sake, but look at the plans of this building. The building looks good. It looks good for the town, and it also starts putting a bit of an emphasis around the old town hall, because it is something that should be a centrepiece. And I think this building starts that off. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Nobody else? Okay, we shall move on. We have an agent. We have a Mr. Justin Cove. Are you with us, Mr. Cove?
I am. Thank you, Chair.
You've got 5 minutes, Mr. Cove. Off you go.
Okay, thank you. Hello, yeah, my name's Justin Cove. I'm a director at Hive Land and Planning, and we're acting as a planning agent on behalf of Middlesbrough Council in respect of this application. The office's report provides a robust justification of proposals in planning terms, and approval of the scheme will enable BCEGI, as the council's developer manager, to proceed with activities that will allow construction to begin later this year. The application has been informed by an extensive design, market analysis, planning and consultation process that has shaped the scheme's proposed mix of uses, as well as the overall scale of development proposed. Throughout the design process at the pre-application stage, the appointed project team has engaged with a wide range of statutory consultees, and changes to the scheme have been made to respond positively to the feedback received. This includes liaison with the local highway authority, Northumbrian Water and Historic England. As a result, the proposals have been independently assessed by a wide range of third-party consultees, ensuring that a robust and deliverable proposal has been submitted. The approval of this application will represent a significant landmark, not just for this scheme, but for the regeneration of Middlesbrough Town Centre as a whole. As with many town centres across the country, the town centre has suffered following the decline of high street shopping that has occurred over the last few decades. This site lies within the historic core of Middlesbrough and the Boho area, and this represents a fantastic opportunity to deliver new job opportunities, embrace changes in the way people live their lives, and contribute towards the creation of a vibrant new town centre environment the people of Middlesbrough can be proud of. The proposed scheme is being built to specifically cater for the digital, creative and technology sectors, and to provide flexible workspaces in which local businesses can establish themselves and grow. The associated leisure opportunities provided by the gym, swimming pool, cafe and bar and event space will make this a highly attractive place for people to work and socialise, and the lecture theatre will also foster important links with events being held within the building, driving new footfall into the area. The space being created around the building is just as important, and so new high-quality public realm is proposed, which includes features such as an urban orchard, tree planting, seating areas, pedestrian and cycle routes and open spaces. Achieving high levels of sustainability has also been at the heart of the design process, making sure the development is future-proofed for generations to come, and this has been achieved in a number of ways. Photovoltaic panel arrays are to be attached to the roof. The office accommodation will benefit from the latest telecom connectivity technology, and the building has been orientated and designed to maximise the potential for passive heat and the use of sustainable materials. Sustainable methods of drainage are also to be utilised in the form of a rain garden to capture rainwater runoff, and an attenuation tank will be placed below the orchard to collect and store rain and surface water. New pedestrian and cycle routes will run through the site, helping to significantly improve connectivity, which will then link through to the wider Boho master plan proposals and the rest of the town centre, encouraging sustainable methods of travel. Substantial medium to long-term economic benefits could be felt as early as later this year, as the scheme will create a substantial number of construction jobs, and it will generate significant new job opportunities in the digital sector over the next 10 years and beyond. Millions of pounds will be added to the GVA in the local economy by 2032, and the local area will also benefit from the additional spend in Middlesbrough Town Centre every year. Social and wellbeing benefits will then also be realised through the creation of these new job opportunities and the increase in support of local services. To conclude, the vision is to create a vibrant working environment at the heart of Middlesbrough that will significantly improve the town centre offer, complementing existing attractions and enhance the heritage assets of the surrounding historic quarter, including the Old Town Hall. By granting planning permission today, you will allow us to complete the detailed design package and get development underway at the earliest opportunity. The swift delivery of this scheme is central to Middlesbrough's regeneration strategy for the town centre and will act as a major catalyst for the wider Boho area and many more regeneration schemes to succeed. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cove. Anybody got any questions for Mr. Cove? No, can't see anybody. We'll have another look. No, definitely not. Right, so we'll move on again. We've got no objectors wishing to speak. There's no sign of any ward councillors. So, has anybody got any more questions in light of the information that we've had? Anybody want to ask anything else before we go into lockdown and have a vote? No? Okay.
Chair, can I just suggest there was a revised plan submitted sort of a week or so ago, which just moved the position of the cycle store. So the recommendation slightly changed from that in the report. It's recommendation to approve still, just subject to adding the additional plan referencing that we've got in from the applicant. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Okay. So, would somebody like to make a proposal? Anybody on the committee like to suggest? Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think, this is something that's been talked about for a number of years now, and it would benefit this area and the town. So I'm happy to approve this. Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Dodds, looks like you were the seconder, are you? Got your hand up?
Well, I tried to get in first, but I wasn't quick enough. Yes, I propose we accept the application. It will be an asset to Middlehaven, and it's the regeneration of our town is badly needed. And I think this building, although it looks a little over the top, by the time everything else is built around it, I think it'll look superb. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else got anything to say? So it's been proposed by Councillor Thompson that we accept this proposal, seconded by Councillor Dodds. Straightforward vote again, for, against or abstain. We'll start with me again. Councillor Hobson, I'm for. Councillor Dodds, sorry, Councillor Coop.
For.
Councillor Cooper.
For, Chair.
Councillor Branson.
For, Chair.
Councillor Dodds.
For.
Councillor Garvey.
For, Chair.
Councillor Nugent.
For, Chair.
Councillor Rostron.
For, Chair.
Councillor Thompson. She must be for. And Councillor Wilson.
For, Chair.
Chair, all 10 members have voted to approve the application.
Thank you very much, members. I can now confirm that following the vote, the decision of the committee is to approve this planning application. Thank you for all that. We'll now move on slightly. We'll go on to agenda item number 6, which are the applications approved by the head of planning. These are these things that you've got in little boxes, which have been done by Andy Glossop's team. There's about 4 pages this meeting. So has anybody got anything they would like to say on it? Councillor Thompson, you have straight away.
Yep, thank you. It's on page 87. Berwick Hills and Pallister, the change of use from public house to a convenience store has been refused. Can I ask the reasons why this was refused? Thank you, Chair.
Andy, can you deal with that? It was the new Castle House, I think, wasn't it?
Yes, Chair, I can. Yeah. Because the property is outside of our local centre or local centres, we have defined local centres where retailing and these types of uses are encouraged to go to, and that's a national requirement, and that's also a local requirement. What they have to do is basically justify going to this location. If there's no available units within the local centre, then it's reasonable to consider out of centre sites. In this instance, there's empty units within the local centre, so you would normally push this type of development where you want to act as a nucleus, as a hub for the community, effectively, where bus services and car parks or whatever it may be can all serve these types of units, and you get kind of group trips, if you like. So one person visiting one shop can then go to the doctors or to the whatever it may be, whatever else is within that group. So they weren't able to demonstrate that through the submission. We invited them to submit further information, and they weren't able to do that. I think there was also an issue around the car park associated with it. This property is on a junction, and the main issue for officers really is that any reuse of the building doesn't spill out vehicles or encourage vehicles to park on the around the corner at the junction of the building. We'd asked for further information on them demonstrating that the car park would actively work and allow the proper manoeuvring we would expect in a car park for a shop, and they didn't submit further information to demonstrate that. So without that information, it was a refusal. Chair, thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Councillor Cooper.
You're on mute, Councillor Cooper. Sorry.
Right, I'll try again. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm thinking about the local people. I understand this is a built-up area with lots of houses, and wouldn't it be nice for the local people to be able to walk to a local shop? We have had Buy Local as a campaign over COVID. So were the actual people in the area who this would affect suitably consulted? Thank you.
Andy?
Yeah, I mean, with all applications, we're duty bound to consult. Small applications, we don't consult too wide. Bigger applications, we consult much wider. So we did do that. I think for this, there would have been a site notice put up as well in the local area. So we do consult with people. We get very little by way of response quite often. It's usually just the people who live immediately adjacent who are maybe concerned about noise disturbance and them types of things. But we did consult, but nevertheless, Chair, we can't get away from, they've got to demonstrate for national to meet national requirements that that there's no vacancies within the local centre. We've got a hierarchy of centres within Middlesbrough, and to make sure that they are viable and have sort of good vitality, lots of people using them, we have to try and keep these uses into those areas where reasonably possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Sorry, Chair, if I can just come on that point as well. Councillor Cooper, the legislation's just changed recently in terms of this class order, which does allow for small local stores to open in areas such as this, but the scheme would have been above that. So it's would have been seen as it not being within those new rules.
Thank you. Anybody else got any? Can't see any hands up. Councillor Garvey and Councillor Wilson after him.
Thanks, Chair. It's I asked my ward. I went to Andy. I went to Paul and I asked what had gone on. And as Andy has just said, I asked twice. No communication backwards and forwards, and therefore, there's that sort of thing going on. So he did answer that question. Something needs to be done with the Newcastle House, but when an application comes in, as Andrew's just said, if the application isn't successful, then the consultation is pointless if the application isn't successful. So the whole idea of what we're going to do with the Newcastle House has to be based upon a reasonable and an idea that is workable. And as Andrew said, they were trying to find it to be workable, and nothing came back. So I just wanted to put that in. I've already dealt with that as the ward councillor. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Garvey. Councillor Wilson, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, just a little one. Is this are the shops still on Westdale Road? Are they closed down altogether? Just a question. If they're closed down, I'm just wondering why we couldn't have the Newcastle House open.
No idea.
I think, Chair, that is no longer. I think they closed down. If it's what I'm thinking of, they've closed down. It's no longer defined as a local centre. So if it had been a local centre, potentially it would have been acceptable. But because it's not, and as Andy said, in terms of sequential approach, we'll have to look at Berwick Hills District Centre first, which is the nearest centre, and then take it from there.
Thanks, Rob.
Right, thank you. Anybody else got any questions on these? We've had rather a lot today, haven't we? We don't normally get that many. Right. Right, what we're going to do now is close the meeting. But before we do that, I'm going to ask Daniel to stop the live streaming, because we need to do a little 10-minute version of training, and it really doesn't need to go out live streamed. It wants to be done in-house. So Daniel, if you can stop the live streaming for us, please.